Tom Richards laughed when Danny Walsh said it, actually laughed out loud right there in the dealership. "You're gonna pay off $150,000 today?" "Sure you are, Danny. And I'm gonna fly to the moon tomorrow." It was Tuesday morning, February 4th, 2025. Tom owned Richards John Deere in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 28 years running the dealership. He'd heard every excuse, every promise, every grand plan from farmers who couldn't make their payments. Danny Walsh owed $150,000 on equipment he'd financed 3 years ago. Tractor, combine, planter, all financed at 11% interest because Danny's credit was marginal when he bought. Young farmer, just starting out, banks were nervous. Danny had been making minimum payments, $500 a month, barely covering interest. The principal hadn't budged much. At this rate, he'd be paying for 20 more years. Then Danny called Tuesday morning. "Tom, I'm coming in today. Gonna pay off the whole thing." Tom assumed Danny meant pay off one piece of equipment, maybe the planter. That was only $32,000 remaining. "Which piece you paying off?" "All of it. The whole $150,000. That's when Tom laughed. "Danny, you don't have $150,000. You barely scrape together $500 a month. Where you getting that kind of money?" "You'll see. I'll be there at noon." Tom hung up, shook his head. Poor kid was delusional, probably thought he could refinance somewhere, didn't understand that moving debt around wasn't the same as paying it off. Noon came. Danny walked in wearing his usual torn jeans, faded t-shirt, boots with mud caked on them. Drove up in his beat-up 2004 Ford Ranger with 230,000 miles on it. Tom met him at the counter. "Danny, what's this about paying off your loan?" "Exactly what I said. I'm paying off all $150,000 today." "With what money?" Danny reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. Plain white envelope, kind you get at the grocery store. "With this." Tom opened it. Inside, a cashier's check, made out to Richards John Deere. Amount $150,000 even. Tom's smile disappeared. He stared at the check, looked at Danny, looked back at the check. "This is real. Call the bank if you want. It's real." Tom did call. Took 10 minutes to verify. The check was legitimate. Danny Walsh had $150,000 and was paying off his entire equipment loan in full. Tom hung up, looked at Danny with completely different eyes. "Where did you get $150,000? "Inheritance. My uncle died 6 weeks ago, left me some money." "Your uncle left you $150,000? "No, he left me $780,000. I'm using $150 to pay off debt. Rest is going into savings and investments." Tom nearly fell over. $780,000. This 29-year-old farmer in torn jeans driving a 20-year-old truck just inherited $750,000. "Danny, I apologize for laughing. I didn't know about your uncle." "You couldn't have known. He lived in Arizona. I only saw him every few years. Didn't expect this." Tom processed the payment. $150,000. Largest payoff he'd seen all year. Danny's loan was cleared. Equipment was his, free and clear. As Danny was leaving, Tom said, "Danny, can I give you some advice? $780,000 is life-changing money. Don't waste it. Most people who get sudden money blow through it in 5 years. Be smarter than that." Danny stopped, turned around. "Tom, I grew up poor. My dad lost our farm in 2008. I watched him go from owning 800 acres to working at Walmart. I learned something from that. Debt is a trap. That's why the first thing I did with this money was pay off every dollar I owed. The equipment is mine now. No payments, no interest, no bank owns my stuff." "What are you doing with the rest?" "Putting it where I can't touch it easily. Investments, bonds, some in land if the right deal comes along. But I'm not buying a new truck, not building a fancy house, not taking vacations to Hawaii. I'm living exactly like I lived before this money showed up, because the money doesn't change who I am." Tom was impressed. Most 29-year-olds would blow that money in a year. Most 29-year-olds didn't watch their dad lose everything. I did. I'm not making his mistakes. Danny left. Tom stood there thinking about the encounter. He'd laughed at a farmer who turned out to have more financial sense than most people twice his age. 3 months later, May 2025, Danny came back to the dealership. Tom saw him walk in, wondered if he was buying something. "Danny, what brings you in?" "I want to buy a tractor, cash." Tom pulled up inventory. "What are you looking for?" "Something used, reliable, maybe 15 to 20 years old, good condition. I don't need new, just need functional." Tom showed him a 2010 John Deere 7310. Good tractor, well-maintained, priced at $42,000. Danny looked it over, test drove it, came back. "I'll give you $38,000 cash for it," Tom countered. "$40,000 and it's yours." $39,000, final offer. They settled at $39,000. Danny paid cash, literally showed up next day with $39,000 in an envelope, all hundreds. Tom counted it, shook his head. "Danny, most people would finance this. You're paying cash." "Why?" "Because I never want to owe money on equipment again. I spent 3 years making that $500 payment. Hated every month of it. Felt like a chain around my neck. I'm done with debt forever. If I can't pay cash, I don't buy it." Over the next 6 months, word spread in the farming community. Danny Walsh inherited money, paid off all his debt, was farming debt-free at age 29. Some farmers were jealous. "Must be nice to inherit money. Some of us have to work for it." Danny heard the comments, didn't argue. But his friend Marcus told him, "Those guys saying you got lucky, they're the same guys who'd blow through $780,000 in 3 years. You did something smart with it. That's not luck. That's discipline." By December 2025, Danny had made moves that showed his discipline, used $150,000 to pay off equipment debt, invested $200,000 in municipal bonds, put $150,000 in high-yield savings, bought 80 acres of farmland for $240,000 cash, kept $40,000 as emergency fund, total $780,000 accounted for. He still drove the 2004 Ranger, still wore torn jeans, still lived in his small rental house, paying $800 a month. People asked, "Danny, you have money now. Why are you still living like you're broke?" His answer, "Because I'm not rich. I'm just temporarily comfortable. Rich is when your money makes enough money that you never have to work again. I'm not there yet. So I live cheap, save the rest, let it grow. Maybe in 20 years I'll be rich. Right now I'm just a farmer who got lucky and didn't waste it." Tom Richards saw Danny every few months. Each time Tom was more impressed. This kid who'd laughed at had more financial sense at 29 than Tom had at 56. In one of their conversations, Tom asked, "Danny, what did your dad teach you about money? You seem to have learned lessons most people never learn." Danny's face got serious. "My dad taught me what not to do. He borrowed to expand, bought equipment on credit, financed land. When prices crashed in 2008, he couldn't make payments, lost everything. I watched him cry, watched my mom work 2 jobs, watched them sell our house. That's what my dad taught me. Debt destroys you if you're not careful, so I avoid it." "Your dad ever recover?" "No. He died in 2020, heart attack. He was 58. Stress killed him. He spent 12 years working at Walmart after losing the farm. Never got over it. That's why I'm so careful with money. I don't want to die like my dad did, broken and defeated." Tom understood then. Danny wasn't just being smart with money. He was honoring his father by not making the same mistakes. The farmer who said he'd pay off $150,000 wasn't lying. The dealer who laughed learned a lesson about assumptions, and the inheritance that could have been wasted became a foundation for a debt-free life. Sometimes the poorest-looking farmer is the smartest. Sometimes an envelope with a check teaches you more than a business degree. Sometimes young farmers know more than old dealers. Tom never laughed at a farmer again. Not after Danny Walsh taught him that you can't judge financial capability by someone's truck. The laugh became respect. The shock became admiration. The lesson became permanent. Never underestimate a farmer who says they'll pay off their debt. They might just surprise you. But the full story of Danny Walsh's inheritance and what he did with it reveals something deeper about wealth, wisdom, and learning from tragedy. The backstory, how Danny's dad lost everything. Danny's father was Michael Walsh, farmed 800 acres in Lynn County, Iowa. Good farmer, hard worker, believed in the American dream of growth and expansion. In 2003, Michael owned 320 acres, free and clear. Farming was good, prices were decent. Michael decided to expand. He borrowed $260,000 to buy another 240 acres. Then borrowed $190,000 for new equipment, then another $80,000 for a grain bin. Total debt by 2005, $530,000. His annual debt service was around $58,000, manageable when corn was at $3 a bushel. But in 2008, everything collapsed. Corn prices crashed to $2.10. Michael's income dropped from $120,000 to $75,000. He couldn't cover his debt service. He tried refinancing. Banks said no. He tried selling land. Nobody was buying. He tried cutting expenses. Couldn't cut enough. By 2009, Michael was 12 months behind on payments. The bank started foreclosure. Danny was 13 years old. He watched men in suits show up at their house, watched his dad sign papers with shaking hands, watched his mother cry in the kitchen. The farm sold at auction in March 2010. 800 acres brought $620,000 total. After paying off debts, Michael walked away with $42,000 from land he'd spent 20 years building. The family moved to a rental house in Cedar Rapids. Michael got a job at Walmart stocking shelves overnight, made $28,000 a year. Danny's mom worked at a nursing home making $23,000. They went from farming family to working poor in 18 months. Danny never forgot the shame in his dad's eyes, never forgot hearing his parents argue about money, never forgot eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. That's what shaped Danny. That's why when he inherited $780,000, his first thought was, pay off debt. Never owe anyone anything ever again. Uncle Robert's wisdom. Danny's Uncle Robert was Michael's younger brother. Took a different path. Worked as an engineer in Arizona. Never farmed. Made good money. Saved aggressively. Robert never married. No kids. Lived simply. Invested wisely. By the time he died at 71 in December 2024, he'd accumulated $1.6 million. He split it between Danny and Danny's cousin Sarah. Each got $780,000. But Robert left a letter with the inheritance. Danny read it the day he got the news. Danny, you're getting this money because I trust you won't waste it. I watched your father destroy himself with debt and bad decisions. I loved Michael, but he didn't understand money. You do. I've watched you farm the last few years. You're careful. You avoid debt. You live cheap. That's smart. This money is a gift, but also a test. Most people who inherit money blow through it in 5 years. They buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. Don't be most people. Use this money to build security. Pay off debts. Invest for the long term. Live below your means. In 20 years, if you do this right, this $780,000 will have grown to over $2 million. That's the power of patience and compound interest. But if you waste it, if you buy new trucks and fancy equipment and take expensive vacations, you'll be broke by the time you're 35, and you'll have dishonored my memory and your father's lessons. Choose wisely. I believe in you. Danny read that letter 3 times, then did exactly what Robert suggested. Paying off the debt, the emotional weight. The day Danny paid off the $150,000 wasn't just about money. It was about freedom. Danny had spent 3 years making that $500 monthly payment. Every month, writing that check hurt. Not because he couldn't afford it, he could barely afford it, but because it represented being owned. The bank owned his tractor. The bank owned his combine. The bank owned his planter. Danny was just making payments to use stuff that wasn't his. He hated it, hated checking the balance and seeing 148,000, then 146,000, then 144,000. The number decreased so slowly. At $500 a month, most of it going to interest, it felt endless. The morning he drove to the dealership with that cashier's check, Danny felt lighter than he'd felt in 3 years. Walking into Tom Richards' office, seeing Tom's skeptical face, hearing Tom laugh, none of it bothered Danny. Because Danny knew something Tom didn't. In about 5 minutes, Tom was going to be shocked. When Tom verified the check and realized it was real, Danny felt vindicated. Not in a mean way, just in a "I told you so" way. Driving home that day with the loan paid off, Danny pulled over on a county road and cried. Just sat in his truck and cried. Relief, joy, freedom. His equipment was his. Completely his. Nobody could take it. No bank could repossess it. No missed payment would destroy him. He called his mom. "Mom, I paid it off. All of it. The equipment is mine." His mom cried too. "Your dad would be proud of you, Danny. He made mistakes, but you learned from them. That's what he'd want." Investing the rest, Danny's strategy. Danny didn't just pay off debt and forget the rest. He had a plan for all 780,000, 150,000, pay off debt, done immediately, 200,000, municipal bonds yielding 4% tax-free, 8,000 annually, 150,000, high-yield savings at 4.5%, 6,750 annually, 240,000, buy 80 acres, farmland cash, 40,000, emergency fund in checking account. The land purchase was strategic. 80 acres came up for sale in March 2025. Owner retiring, no kids who wanted to farm. Asking 290,000. Danny offered 240,000 cash, close in 2 weeks. Seller accepted. Now Danny owned 80 acres outright, worth about 290,000, but bought for 240,000. Instant 50,000 in equity. Plus the land generated rental income. Danny rented it to a neighbor for $140 per acre. That's $11,200 annually, minus property taxes of $3,200. Net, $8,000 per year passive income. Danny's total passive income by mid-2025. Municipal bonds, $8,000 savings interest, $6,750 land rental net, $8,000 total, $22,750 per year. He was 29 years old, making $22,750 in passive income alone, plus his farming income of about $45,000. Total income, $67,750. Living expenses, $20,000. Danny lived cheap. Savings, $47,750 per year. At this rate, reinvesting savings, Danny would be a millionaire by age 38, multimillionaire by age 50, all because he didn't waste his inheritance. The community response. Other young farmers heard about Danny's situation. Reactions varied. Some were supportive. Good for Danny. He got lucky, but he's being smart about it. Others were jealous. Must be nice to inherit money. I have to work for everything. Danny heard both. Didn't argue with either. But he did clarify when people asked directly. Yes, I inherited money. No, that's not why I'm doing well. I'm doing well because I didn't waste it. Plenty of people inherit money and blow it. I chose to use it wisely. That's the difference. One young farmer, Jake Morrison, aged 27, asked Danny for advice over coffee. Danny, I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. Owe $230,000 on equipment and land. Making minimum payments. Feel like I'm drowning. What would you do? Danny thought carefully. Jake, I can't tell you what to do. But I can tell you what I learned watching my dad. Debt is a trap if you can't control it. If you're drowning, stop borrowing. Stop expanding. Focus on paying down what you owe. It might take 10 years, but 10 years of discipline beats 30 years of struggling. But everyone says you have to expand to survive. Everyone's wrong. My dad believed that. He expanded. He lost everything. Small and debt-free beats big and leveraged every time. Jake took the advice seriously. By December 2025, he'd paid off $32,000 in debt by cutting expenses and focusing every spare dollar on principal. Still had a long way to go, but he was moving the right direction. Tom Richards's transformation. Tom, the dealer who laughed at Danny, was changed by the encounter. For 28 years, Tom had pushed farmers to buy more, upgrade faster, finance everything. His philosophy, growth equals success. Danny challenged that. Here was a young farmer who paid cash, bought used, avoided debt, and was building more wealth at 29 than most farmers had at 50. Tom started questioning his approach. Was he actually helping farmers by pushing them to finance equipment, or was he putting them in traps? He looked at his customer base differently. How many farmers had he sold equipment to who later couldn't make payments? How many had he encouraged to invest in growth who ended up foreclosing? The number was uncomfortable. Maybe 20% of farmers Tom sold to over the years had eventually struggled with payments. Some lost equipment to repossession, some went bankrupt. Tom had blamed economic conditions. The 2008 crash hurt everyone. Low commodity prices made it hard. Never blamed his own sales tactics. But watching Danny walk in and pay off $150,000 cash made Tom realize maybe the problem wasn't the economy, maybe the problem was debt. Tom changed his sales approach, started asking customers, can you afford this? Not can you make the payment, can you actually afford to own this? His sales team objected, Tom, if we only sell what people can afford, we'll sell half as much. Maybe. But our customers will survive. I'd rather sell less to farmers who succeed than sell more to farmers who fail. Revenue dropped 15% in 2025, but customer satisfaction increased, and importantly, Tom slept better at night. The lesson spreads. By end of 2025, Danny's story had spread through farming circles in eastern Iowa. The young farmer who inherited money and didn't waste it became a cautionary tale in reverse. Parents told their kids, be like Danny Walsh. He got money and didn't waste it. Financial advisors used him as an example. Client inherited $780,000, paid off debt, invested wisely, lives cheaply. Model behavior. Even Tom Richards told the story at industry conferences. I laughed at a farmer who said he'd pay off $150,000. He did. Taught me not to judge people by their truck. The story resonated because it was rare. Most inheritance stories end badly. Person gets money, buys stuff, money disappears. Danny's story was different. Got money, bought freedom, money grew. That's why people remembered it. That's why it mattered. The final word. In December 2025, almost a year after the inheritance, a local newspaper interviewed Danny for a feature on young farmers. The reporter asked, Danny, looking back, what would you tell other young people who suddenly get money? Danny's answer, I'd tell them what my uncle told me. This is a test. Most people fail it. They buy things to look rich instead of investing to become rich. If you want to pass the test, do 3 things. 1, pay off all debt immediately. 2, invest the rest conservatively. 3, live like you never got the money. If you do those 3 things, the money will change your life. If you don't, the money will disappear and you'll regret it forever. Any regrets about how you used the inheritance? Only one. I wish I'd gotten the money before my dad died. I would have paid off his debt, helped him keep the farm. But I can't change the past. I can only honor his memory by not making his mistakes. What would your dad think about what you've done? Danny's eyes got watery. He'd be proud. He taught me what not to do by doing it himself. That's a hard way to teach, but it's effective. I watched him lose everything. I'll never forget that lesson. So every financial decision I make, I ask, would this make my dad proud, or would this repeat his mistakes? So far, I think I'm making him proud. The dealer who laughed learned respect. The farmer who inherited learned discipline. The money that could have been wasted became a foundation. And somewhere Uncle Robert and Michael Walsh would both be proud. One because Danny used the gift wisely, the other because Danny learned from tragedy and built something better. The lesson: inheritance is a test, debt is a trap, discipline is freedom. Danny passed the test, escaped the trap, found freedom, all because he paid off $150,000 when everyone thought he couldn't. The laugh became shock. The shock became respect. The respect became a lesson that spread. Never underestimate a young farmer with a plan. They might just surprise you. Epilogue: The Ripple Effect. 1 year later, February 2026, marked 1 year since Danny paid off his debt. The changes in his life and others were measurable. Danny's financial position 1 year later: municipal bonds, still $200,000, generated $8,000 in tax-free interest, high-yield savings, grown from $150,000 to $198,000 through interest and additions, land ownership, 80 acres now worth $310,000, appreciated $30,000 in 1 year, cash reserves, grown from $40,000 to $63,000, equipment, all owned free and clear, no debt, total net worth, approximately $671,000 in 1 year. Danny had grown his net worth from $780,000, the inheritance, to $671,000 after spending $150,000 paying debt, plus appreciation and savings. Effective net worth actually increased despite the debt payoff because of smart investing and appreciation. His passive income had also grown. Bond interest, $8,000, savings interest, $8,910, 4.5% on $198,000. Land rental, $8,000 total passive, $24,910 annually. At 30 years old, Danny was generating nearly $25,000 in passive income alone. Add his $48,000 from farming, his total income was $72,910. Living on $22,000, he'd increased spending slightly but remained disciplined. He was saving $50,910 per year. At this rate, reinvested, Danny would hit $1 million net worth by age 34. Multimillionaire by 45. All from one inheritance used wisely. Jake Morrison's journey. Remember Jake, the 27-year-old who asked Danny for advice? His progress was remarkable. When Jake first talked to Danny in March 2025, he owed $230,000 and felt hopeless. Danny's advice: stop borrowing, focus on paying down debt. Jake implemented it, stopped eating out, saved $300 monthly, sold his boat he never used, got $8,000, stopped upgrading his truck, saved $500 monthly payment, cut cable TV, saved $120 monthly, worked winter construction jobs, earned extra $12,000. In 1 year, Jake paid off $48,000 in debt, still owed $182,000, but the progress was real. More importantly, Jake's mindset changed. In December 2025, he told Danny, "A year ago, I felt like a slave to debt. Now I feel like I'm winning. Still have a long way to go, but I'm moving the right direction. That's hope." Jake's goal: be debt-free by age 35. 8 years of discipline. Hard, but doable. Tom Richards's new philosophy. Tom's dealership transformation continued. By February 2026, the changes were significant. Sales were down 18% from peak, but customer retention was up 39%. Bad debts were down 62%. Customer referrals were up 47%. Tom's annual income dropped from $135,000 to $108,000, but his stress dropped 70%. Worth the trade. He'd also started a financial literacy program at the dealership. Once a quarter, he brought in a financial advisor to teach farmers about debt management, budgeting, and investing. Free seminar, no sales pitch, just education. 12 farmers attended the first seminar, 34 attended the second, 61 attended the third. Word spread, Richard's John Deere actually cares about farmer success, not just sales. Tom's reputation changed, from aggressive salesman to farmer advocate. His business model changed from volume to value. The broader impact. Danny's story reached beyond his immediate circle. The newspaper article got picked up regionally. A farming podcast interviewed him. A financial blog featured his strategy. 3 consistent themes emerged in responses. Theme 1, skepticism. This story is fake. No 29-year-old has that kind of discipline. Danny's response, you're right that most don't. I do because I watch my father lose everything. That's a powerful teacher. Theme 2, jealousy. Easy to be disciplined when you inherit money. Try doing it from zero. Danny's response, fair point, but I was doing it before the inheritance. I was paying that $500 monthly from farming income. I was living cheap and saving. The inheritance accelerated my progress, but the discipline was already there. Theme 3, inspiration. This shows it's possible. I'm starting today. Danny's response, good, start small, save something, anything, build the habit. The amount matters less than the consistency. By year-end 2025, Danny had received 347 emails from people across the country. Most asked for advice. Some shared their own stories. A few just said thanks for the inspiration. Danny answered all of them, spent an hour each Sunday responding to emails, considered it paying forward the wisdom his uncle had shared. The family legacy. Danny's mom, Carol, saw her son's transformation with mixed emotions. Pride in Danny's wisdom, sadness remembering Michael's struggles. In one conversation in November 2025, she told Danny, your father would be so proud of you. He made mistakes, but those mistakes taught you. In a way, his struggles gave you wisdom. That's a gift, even if it came painfully. Danny agreed. Dad's biggest gift to me was showing me what not to do. That's hard to teach. He lived it so I wouldn't have to. Do you think about him much? Every day, every financial decision I think, what would Dad do? And then I do the opposite if he'd make the mistake. It's like he's still teaching me even 5 years after he died, Carol cried. He'd love knowing that. He felt like such a failure at the end. Knowing his struggles helped you succeed would mean everything to him. The final lesson. The dealer laughed when the farmer said he'd pay off $150,000. The dealer was shocked when the check cleared. The dealer learned never to judge by appearances, but the deeper lesson was about inheritance and wisdom. Most people who inherit money waste it. 90% of inheritances are gone within 5 years. Danny belonged to the 10% who used it wisely. Why? Because he'd been taught through tragedy what not to do. His father's failure became his education. That's the paradox. Sometimes the greatest gift is watching someone fail and learning from it. Michael Walsh lost his farm and died broken, but his son learned from that tragedy and built something better. Inheritance without wisdom disappears. Wisdom without inheritance builds slowly. Inheritance plus wisdom builds empires. Danny had both, used both, honored both his uncle's gift and his father's lesson. The farmer who paid off $150,000 wasn't lucky. He was disciplined. The money helped, but the mindset mattered more. And somewhere Uncle Robert and Michael Walsh were both proud. One because his money was used perfectly. The other because his mistakes weren't repeated. The laugh became shock. The shock became respect. The respect became a movement. Because Danny Walsh proved that young farmers can be wise, that inheritance can be used properly, that debt can be defeated, that discipline wins. The dealer never laughed at a farmer again. The lesson was learned. The story spread. Never underestimate a farmer who says they'll pay off their debt. They might surprise you. They might inspire you. They might change how you think about money, farming, and wisdom. Danny Walsh did all three. And he did it wearing torn jeans, driving a 20-year-old truck, living in a rental house, because looking rich and being rich are different things. Danny chose being rich. Let others chase looking rich. That's the final lesson. That's what the dealer learned. That's what the farmer proved. Pay off your debt, build your wealth, live below your means. Honor those who taught you, even if they taught through failure. That's farming wisdom. That's life wisdom. That's the wisdom that turns 780,000 into millions over a lifetime. The dealer laughed. The farmer won. The lesson lives forever.